Welcome to Kickin't It with Grant Mahoney, and I am Jeff Woody. This is on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network. We are digitally live, because scheduling with four people becomes a bit. Four people, you might be wondering. There's Grant Mahoney. Hi, Grant.
Hello, how are you, Jeff?
There's me. There's Aiden, the producer, who's just been screwing around with everybody. Let's just call it that before we started. And we got a guest. So before we introduce that guest, thank you to Kelderman Manufacturing. If you are a person who tailgates, which many of you are, we officially made it to the actual start of the season. And if you have an RV or a truck or a trailer, if you need something, you want to boost that thing, you want to get some accessory, you want to lift it, you want to change something about it, Kelderman Manufacturing, contact them. They're the ones that are going to do A+ work on getting your truck or heavy machinery to be what you need it to be. But we officially made it to the start of the season.
It's game week, baby.
We did it. And it kind of felt like, it sort of feels like it's like a transatlantic voyage where like you leave from, I don't know, London, whatever, and you're just in the ocean and you have no idea when you're going to get there. This year, the seas have been a little rocky. We didn't quite get Titanic-wise.
We lost a couple passengers along the way.
Bucked some people off the ship. There was a mutiny a little bit. But we have reached the point where you can see the harbor. When that first harbor naturally is in Cedar Falls, Iowa. So you wisely got us someone who is in that harbor who can give us an idea of what we're cruising into before we actually get to Saturday. Who do we have because we're going to try and do this as much as we can to get someone from the upcoming team to get an idea, whether it's a reporter or a kicker or special teams player or a football player, somebody who played there, someone who has some knowledge of the situation to be able to give us an idea what we're getting into. So our UNI guest, who is it, Grant?
Yeah, so I had to go back to my 319 roots. I played against this gentleman back in high school, and then he went on to have a great career at UNI where he was an All-American kicker.
Three-time All-American.
Three-time All-American kicker. His name is Tyler Sievertsen. Go ahead and bring him on if you'd like to, Aiden. There he is. How are you, Tyler?
Hey, guys. Excited to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
I'm outnumbered by kickers.
Yeah.
Never a bad thing, Jeff.
So welcome, man. Appreciate you popping on.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Excited to have this very in-depth conversation about this first game, which is always, most of the time, always going to be a good one.
Okay, so I kind of have to ask, because as Iowa State fans, and this is whether or not it's Iowa or Iowa State, when you're playing a Northern Iowa, so Todd Blythe coached at UNI for a while. He played, obviously, at Iowa State. And one of the things he was saying is that, like, pretty much your whole offseason, it doesn't necessarily – you're not, like, planning to win one game and then screw it for the rest of the year. But there is more emphasis put on the Iowa/Iowa State first game of the year. What's that like being a guy at UNI? Like, what type of prep does the team normally go to when you're playing against one of the other in-state schools? What's that like for you guys?
100%. And I think it all goes back to kind of like a personality of, you know, you may or may not have gotten recruited by an in-state school, but so we all go back to, okay, so this is for us to make a name for ourselves. So we're always the little brother, always will be. And so it's our chance to go out and show what we can do. Like you said, it's not always just preparing for one game, one at a time, because obviously everyone knows the NBFC is stacked with talent. But we definitely put an emphasis on those first games when we actually get to go to a stadium like Jack Trice and just have so many people cheering against you. But a lot of them are your family and friends, which is awesome. So a lot of that hard work, like I said, it's more of a personality type. You have to know going into it that we're motivated to kind of make a statement if we can.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you kind of touched on it too, Tyler. And I've never asked anybody this question, who's played in Jack Trice. Be honest, what was it like being a road team? Your first career game was at the historic Jack Trice Stadium. What was that like?
I made a 42-yard field goal by about this much.
No, so you're
for you audio listeners, that's about 10 inches.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically what it was. And that was right after Billy Hallgren had left, and you guys had blocked a field goal for him that year before. So my training as a kicker, it was all just make sure you don't get blocked. That literally was the conversation. And if I were have gotten blocked, I probably wouldn't be here and a 3-time All-American. I probably would have been sat the first game. But Jack Trice is amazing. I love the fans. I love the atmosphere. And when I talk about it, it's like I've been to Kinnick. We actually got to play Wisconsin, got to play at Camp Randall. But there's nothing like the atmosphere in Ames, to be honest.
Hey, we appreciate that.
Yeah, that's nice. It's good to hear. I mean, I'm biased. I think Jack Trice is pretty damn great. So what
y'all got to compete with Montana though. Montana was the loudest because it's on the side of a mountain, and so everything echoes. It reverbs.
They've got some acoustic engineering. That's not fair. We just got to build like one of those giant, like a European football, like a curved roof that like funnels the sound back in. We got to do that.
Like what Seattle has.
Oh yeah, with the 12s. Yeah. No, you just have good engineering. Seattle, settle down. So what years did you play? And then, because I think this is important for at least because we were kind of prepping for this. We were thinking about a conversation point. So what years were you there that you actually played at?
So I was there. I graduated in 2009 from high school. So I was there. I started 11, 12, and 13.
Okay. So the coaching staff that you had, so going into Iowa State UNI for this year. So the coaching staff that you had is actually almost sort of like the band is getting back together, right? Like that. So with the natural starting talking point when you're talking UNI Iowa State this year is, so Ryan Clanton was Northern Iowa's offensive line coach and now is the Iowa State offensive line coach. That's kind of a direct line from one to the other. Well, one, what type of effect do you think that losing Clanton is going to have on these guys? And I think the answer has something to do with your coaches, at least in some part.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the guys are, because they had spent time with him, it's going to be a little bit of adjustment. But the man that they're bringing in, Rick Nelson, was actually the offensive line coach when I was there. And he has made leaps and bounds in the coaching world. Rick Nelson is one of the greatest coaches that I've ever been around.
Terrific human, too. He was the head coach at Ankeny. He was my guy who recruited me. I have nothing but positive things about Rick Nelson.
Won a state title at Ankeny. But it feels like what Farley is doing, or what UNI is doing, is they're bringing back kind of – the boys are back in town. So a lot of the coaches that were coaching when I was there, so you have Atif, you have Jeremiah Johnson, Bryce Pop is still there. And then obviously bringing in Rick Nelson is a huge thing, especially as how young this team is going to be. I think that bringing in those veteran coaches are going to be huge for UNI.
So one of the other things, so like the natural dynamic, I think that will be interesting. And, you know, we've talked about it offline. We don't have to hash out the Mark Farley takes because people know where I stand. But one of the things that Nelson, having been there for so long, is a guy who can push back when Farley wants to push, you know, is essentially Farley says do something. Nelson doesn't agree with it, can push back on Farley essentially to represent the other side of an argument. And the reason, like, where that comes familiar is that's sort of how the end of the Rhodes tenure, what sort of happened is that it's not necessarily that there were yes men. I'm not saying that, but there were, with Herman there was a lot of times when Rhodes said, do this. And Herman said, nah, piss off. We're doing this instead. And that natural push-pull, whether it was healthy arguments or sometimes more heated arguments, there is naturally two sides to the story. So you can actually have, you can get multiple points of view in there. And I think Mark Farley's personality is very much do this or else. And Nelson is one of the guys who can say, nah, Mark, get out of here. So I think that just dynamic-wise, is that in the right sort of, I don't know, emotional dynamics of the coaching staff? Does that seem right?
I feel like it's more of a trust factor because Nelson had been there for so long. Farley knows that he works into the system. Obviously, they're on different sides of the ball. But like bringing in Jeremiah Johnson, Coach Johnson was there when I was there, and he had been there since he was an intern, I believe. So it's bringing back the guys that he knows and trusts and can be like, hey, on fourth down, are we going to do it or not? You know what I mean? It's more like trusting within the program. Obviously, you always have to talk about the program, but it's trusting that instinct and knowing that they're going to make the right decision. It's more of also to a familiarity. He knows how they're going to react and act. So I feel like bringing back these guys is kind of the first point in continuing to get UNI to the playoffs and continuing to perform for our fans, in which they expect us to perform every year.
So Tyler, you've talked about a few different coaches. Would you mind, I guess, renaming those coaches and just saying what position groups they coach? Just for, I mean, our fans aren't going to know, what positions they are.
Yeah, for sure. So Jeremiah Johnson, he's coming in as the defensive coordinator. He was coaching mostly DBs when I was there. Atif is doing the running backs. So he coached David Johnson when he first came to UNI. So that's
Johnston. Is that
Johnson?
Johnston?
David Johnson.
Oh, God, that guy.
Yeah, you know that guy.
That guy who had like 700 yards against us when we played, because he was because you're an 09 grad, I'm an 09 grad. I think David Johnson's an 09 grad. Man, that sucked. Apparently tackling him was like tackling a mini bus.
Yeah. He has very strong legs, kind of like a thoroughbred. It is amazing to see him work. And then we have Rick Nelson, who's coming back for the offensive line.
Yeah. Sweet. So we kind of talked about Clanton too, and Rick Nelson. So, and this is maybe the last thing we can talk on O-line. We can transition, but so Clanton's big thing is, he's been told or he's said multiple times within practice, like, hey, I don't care if you mess up as long as you're violent. His whole thing is just be violent. Does Nelson have anything that's like his? Hey, have pretty feet. Like, does he have anything that's?
I want you to dress really well. That's what you need to do as an offensive lineman. Dress really well.
No, I think
does Nelson have any kind of MO that he's like, go knock their heads off?
Nelson is more of an old school style of coach. So it's hardworking. You're working in the trenches. You're digging the whole time. It's you go 110%. Even if you make a mistake, you're doing that mistake at 110%. So it's more so, guys, this is it. You are the front line. So you got to bring it every day, 110%. Making sure that, like I said, definitely Arusha was there to a lot of practices. So legendary coach at UNI, offensive line. And so I think that Nelson learned a lot from him. So again, it's more old school style. You're going to be in the trenches. You got to dig hard.
So he's kind of an attitude and energy kind of guy. Things you can control.
Yep.
So not necessarily regarding the coaching staff, but like as a both former player and also kind of a fan of just watching Northern Iowa over the last few years, Theo Day is sort of the name that jumps out to everybody because he's the most experienced quarterback in the state of Iowa at the school that you're at. I mean, Cade McNamara has played some at Michigan. Neither Rocco Beck nor JJ Cole have played at all, really, for Iowa State. So Theo's the guy he's the name that he's the marquee name.
According to Farley, he's the best quarterback in the state, quote unquote.
Farley's he's always gonna chirp something before the he's gonna be like, we have the best defensive line in the conference, or we have the best linebacker, whatever. He's gonna chirp about something. Describe Theo Day's game for those of us who haven't gotten to see him recently, because the last quarterback I believe it's not Will McElvain from Lincoln was the last quarterback that Iowa State played against. So the entire time that Theo Day's been there, hasn't played against Iowa State. So Iowa State fans haven't been able to see him. And it's not like you're going to watch game film of Northern Iowa versus Youngstown State to get a sense of what the game's going to be. What is Theo's game like, and why is he such a marquee name?
Yeah, it's actually been really fun to watch Theo Day kind of progress because he looks like a pocket passer. He's tall. He's able to throw that ball, but he can also run. So that's why I feel like Farley is very excited about this, because not only do you have the option to pass, but you can also run with the quarterback. So that's why I think Theo Day sticks out. And when you think about it, I mean, back when we played, you had like Terrell Rennie, who was a running quarterback. And that's pretty much all he could do. He wasn't a pocket passer. We haven't really had a dynamic.
Fast as hell, though. Fast as hell.
Yes. Yeah. Fast and elusive. But no, I feel like the reason why UNI is so excited about Theo Day is because he has a lot of potential. He has a lot of experience. Not only has he's been in the UNI program long enough to learn the system, but also he's had experience playing at Michigan State, for example. So I feel like that's really exciting, having that much experience and stuff that you can put on the resume. So that's why it is going to be exciting to see. You're only going to find out on Saturday. So
I had heard that he's a dual threat quarterback. So I looked up some of his stats. Correct me if I'm wrong. On ESPN, it says last year he only had 66 yards rushing on 70 attempts. That can't be right?
Yeah, it could be. No, the issue that we had the offensive line wasn't great last year. If you look at what?
Did he just get sacked a ton, and obviously his rushing yards then will go down?
Yeah, and because I feel like we were in a program where that offense was more bet for him to sit in the pocket and pass. And so if you can't get the blocks, you can't get the blocks. I mean, that's an offensive flaw. But I would like to see, just watching him, because I have ESPN3. I watch every single game. Just watching him progress, I feel like too his eyes should be better. He should have more instinctual kind of movements to get outside of the pocket if he has to. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I mean, every year you're going to grow. If I look at myself from my redshirt sophomore year to finally my senior year, where, you're going to have differences once you understand the program. So,
yeah, I'm interested. One of the things that as someone who's more who watches things not necessarily through rose-colored glasses of I want Iowa State to win, but I'm going to have to talk about it either way. So you're watching more analytically than anything. One of the things that is interesting about how Iowa State plays is the way that Iowa State's defense is structured is different than pretty much anybody else's in the country, except the teams that have copied Iowa State, like a Baylor, like Clemson actually plays Iowa State's defense. So you have this really unique front that Iowa State plays, this really unique secondary that you're going to be playing against with Iowa State. One of the things that I'm interested to see, because no quarterback, regardless of how good they have been, no quarterback has just been comfortable against Iowa State's defense. And that with this scheme, and that's Baker Mayfield, that's Jalen Hurts, that is,
Will Greer. Iowa
Greer.
State single-handedly took him out of the Heisman contention.
Like that, no quarterback has felt comfortable there. I'm interested to see mentally, because the coaches or the quarterbacks that have succeeded, or the teams that have succeeded against, Max Duggan notwithstanding, because that was a completely different situation at the end of the year, and that was just kick the shit out of Iowa State. But other than that, basically the teams that have succeeded against Iowa State to have bigger wins have been those that can very quickly forget bad plays, because bad plays will happen against this defense. Is that a trait that Theo has, or is that a trait that you wish he had? Because is he able to forget mistakes, or is he able to, or does he start to push a little bit when it's not going the way he wants it?
I don't think he's been tested in a way that he's going to see against Iowa State. The only way that I say that is because Iowa State's defense has always traditionally been a lot faster. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but they play very quick. It's unlike when you see North Dakota State, right? North Dakota State, they're just going to bang. And that's
North Dakota State is going to take a sledgehammer to your mouth. Like, they're not going to do it very fast. They're just going to take a sledgehammer to your mouth and see how many times before your face breaks open on both offense and defense.
They're going to see if you can make it to 15 rounds. Yeah. Same with South Dakota State. It's going to do the same thing. I would say the only equivalent that would be anywhere close would probably be like an Illinois State. They move a little bit faster, but I don't know necessarily if he's been tested. So that will be something to look out for sure on Saturday, to see if he can get those pre-snap reads, if he can change, if he can move, if he can be dynamic. with what Iowa State is providing on defense.
So kind of transitioning, I guess, Jeff, you have anything else to say about quarterbacks?
No, not necessarily with quarterbacks. I was going to switch to a different position group. So,
yeah, I was just going to say, Tyler, can you talk about like running backs or tight ends, receivers, any kind of stuff we should?
Who's going to be
watching for?
Who do we need? Who and what numbers do we need to pay attention to? And being like, oh fuck, that guy's coming.
So wide receiver wise, Sam Schnee. So he's been in the program for a while. He would definitely be one person to look out for. Like I said, too, our offensive line is pretty young. So that'll be interesting to look out for. Can they hold up to Iowa State's defense? When you think about it even deeper, that's going to be one thing for Theo Day to keep together is, can he show the leadership skills that he has to? Always with younger people on offense, he's going to have to pick them up and say, hey, we got to flush this play, just like Jeff said. It's going to be, can you get up after maybe making a bad play, throwing an interception? Maybe we have a fumble. Maybe he gets sacked. I think that'll be the question to see if he can kind of get up and make that play.
Because UNI's replacing, they got 4 new offensive linemen, correct?
Yep.
And not only, I think last year, one of the interesting things about last year regarding offensive line, I don't want to say, because an Iowa State fan might be like, oh, UNI's offensive line was bad last year, and we got UNI's offensive line coach. Well, that sucks. Replacing 2 NFL draft or first-round NFL draft tackles in back-to-back seasons. So Trevor Penning and Spencer Brown both got drafted in 2022 and 2021, respectively. Both of your tackles are first-round NFL draft picks, and you replace them. A way that I've described that I kind of describe to people who haven't played is like the tip of the arrow is the same tip. So like the angle of like between how fat the arrowhead is sort of like the difference at the very, very point of the arrowhead is the best guy. At the width of that is the 7th best guy. And at LSU, the difference between the first best guy and the 7th best guy is not that big. Like the backups at LSU are pretty damn good still. Yep. The difference is the point of the spear of that arrowhead at FCS programs, especially really good FCS programs like a UNI, like an SDSU, like a North Dakota State. They're the same quality players at the very, very tip. The difference is the 7th best guy on UNI's roster is way different than the 7th best guy on Iowa State's roster. So the depth becomes more of a problem. So when you're replacing 2 first-round draft NFL tackles, replacing them, you're not just going to find a Spencer Brown just out of nowhere, like a team like, whatever, Iowa can find an lineman and just put him in. So I think that's one thing. So anyway, replacing 4 offensive linemen, that's going to be an interesting tall task for Northern Iowa.
Yeah. And I 100% agree. I think it's really nice though that we have Nelson back, and I think that he's pushed out many NFL offensive linemen. So I think that, again, going back to the fact that we have a younger offensive line and having an experienced coach like Rick Nelson will be good for UNI.
Can you talk about like UNI's running backs, or didn't UNI have a good tight end a couple years ago?
They did. I'm not real sure about the tight ends or running backs, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, that's fine. We have the depth chart came out today, which we're going to talk. We're going to talk.
You should be concerned about the tight ends or running backs either. Then,
yeah.
Good.
You guys don't know about it? We don't know about it. Iowa State's depth chart came out, and there are 4 oars. There's 5 potential starters for Iowa State's running back position. There's 4 oars on the depth chart. It's awesome. So, who are we going to see? I don't know either.
Hey, but can they go against UNI's defense?
You tell me. Who on UNI's defense? Because that's been a thing that, like, in the past, it's always. I remember Ben Boothby was the one that we played against when I was there, and he was like 5'10", like 290, 285, like not huge. Played nose guard, but had the fastest freaking hands, and no matter which direction you ran to, he was going to just be in the way. Like he might not get the sack, but just going to be in the way. Who on this defense is someone to watch out for, or has been annoying to other teams?
I think the one is defensive end, Cornelius Bailey.
It should be a familiar name to Iowa State fans. He transferred from Iowa State to UNI.
And he's
Big tall
done
guy,
very
right?
well. Yeah. So he's one to look out for. Again, we're pretty young, but the nice thing about the defense at UNI is it doesn't matter what year it is. We know that they're pretty much going to come out in the same formation, and they're going to say, hey, you just got to beat us. Because the one thing that Farley does really well is working with the hybrids. The hybrids are going to come off the end, and the linebackers are going to be solid in the middle, as always, because that's what Farley's known for. He's the walk-on from walk-on. And then our defensive ends, they're going to be grit. They're going to be more like, I don't know, I guess you could say more like Iowa farm style. They're just going to hit hard, and they're going to come downfield fast as they can. And then we also have there's a stud at cornerback, Woo Governor, who we're pretty excited about.
That's an
Love that.
all-name
Love
team.
that name.
Oh,
Woo Governor.
Governor. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
That sounds like a drinking game.
Right?
Woo Governor.
Woo Governor.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So defense is going to be solid. That's one thing that you can expect from a Farley team is the defense is always going to be there. Whether they're a little bit smaller sometimes, or they could be bigger. Like when you talk about Ben Boothby is a great example. I mean, that guy worked his patootie off every day.
Thank you for censoring yourself for sensitive ears.
You're welcome. I've been working on that. But no, Boothby was an animal. You always knew if that guy had an angle, he was going to get it. It didn't matter who was blocking him. And so that's one thing that stays with the program tradition-wise is we're going to have disciplined defensive linemen. The linebackers are going to come downfield if they have to. The only question then is the passing game. And that has always been a UNI thing. But I think with Jeremiah coming back, they're going to get back to – we used to have lockdown D. I could always expect that the ball wasn't going to move very far. We were going to get on offense. And the only thing was when was I going to kick a field goal? So we'll see how it is this year. Like I said, we do have young guys. But the one thing you can always trust that UNI will produce is a defense.
We're also, I mean, that kind of gives me, concern, I guess, because I guess not concern, but it's something we knew going into the season that, Iowa State we're replacing, our starting quarterback, our starting running back, a starting lineman, starting tight end. So we're replacing some guys that got booted. And then you also had those seniors. So we're young as well too, and inexperienced. We're going to be trotting out a quarterback who's never started before. So, I know UNI always gives us a great fight. It's always a great first game, great test. So I think it'll be a low-scoring game. Another guy that I had kind of done some research on, and I'm not sure if you know much about him, Christian Boyd, D-lineman as well too.
Yep. Yeah, Boyd's been there. I think he started the last 2 years. Last year.
Yep. So yes, it sounds like in the trenches sounds like will be kind of something to look for. Where Iowa State's offensive line, has always kind of been a question mark, and now that Clanton's come in, it's hopefully we're a lot better. And then obviously sounds like that's maybe UNI's strength too is the D line.
Well, no, they'll definitely put them in a lot of movements too. I mean, they'll cross and they won't make it easy. So Farley always has stuff up his sleeve for the first game.
Logistically, so the defense is, if I remember correctly, it's a 3-down front. So it's a 3-4 kind of where you were mentioning that hybrid. There's a guy. He's more of like he's a linebacker body who plays more like a rush end, sort of like a Von Miller-y kind of position where he's not a defensive lineman, but he's not a linebacker. Like that's sort of, and so you got 3 defensive linemen. So it's similar similar to Iowa State in the body types that you're going to be looking at on the defensive side. So front 7 wise, your nose guard is going to be you're the biggest defensive lineman that you have. He's just you got a 300-pounder, he's going to be right there. If you don't have a 300-pounder, it's going to be the dude that has the fastest hands and can just hold his own against a guard. Your defensive ends are going to be guys that are more like any Wazirike light, where Wazirike is a guy who ended up playing for the Broncos, suspended this year for the whole gambling thing, but was 6'5", 320, but plays like a 3 technique, where is sort of a defensive lineman and sort of a defensive end. But then you have another guy who's out there whose main job is just get to the quarterback. Like that hybrid position is get to the quarterback, but throw some wrenches in when you get there. And then because UNI is not going to probably get a 6'3", 250-pound linebacker, most of the time the linebackers, the way that they play is going to be smart and fast, where they're not going to be big dudes. They're just going to be dudes that know exactly where to be at the right spot, and they're going to get there very, very quickly. So with that, you have, generally speaking, and if you have a smaller nose guard, and we played out in Northern Iowa two or three times, I think, when I was there, 09, 11, and 13 maybe. And the 3 times we played him there is kind of a different personnel. If you have a really small, quick like nose guard, the guy who's playing straight zero nose, you can move around a whole lot. The entire defensive line can stunt because they know that they're smarter and faster than you generally. So they're not trying to out bully ball you, and they're not going to try and be North Dakota State. They're going to take a nose guard from head up to the center all the way out to near where the tackle is. They're going to twist a linebacker back to where he was, and then you're going to have somebody else, and you're just going to pick up these crazy fronts. And essentially what that is telling you to do, if you mind your P's and Q's, if you know where your system is, if you know where you're going to be, you can shred Northern Iowa's defense. But if you don't know where you're supposed to be, you don't follow your rules, you're not sure where your eyes should be, there's going to be an unblocked defender somewhere, and you're screwed. And I think that's the gamble that Farley's defenses have always played, is we bet that you aren't going to execute at the level that we execute. Therefore, you're going to screw up more than we do. And if you screw up more than we do, you might get 6 yards on first down, but we're going to get you for -2 on second down, and now you're 3rd and 6. And that's what we're going to have. We're going to force you to do that over and over and over and over all the way down the field. And so when Northern Iowa has gotten into trouble, it's been when they've gotten guys that aren't as disciplined and they're not as in the right spot as they need to be, and all that gambling is a lot of missing. And it seems like you have there is a lot of young guys that are going to be on Northern Iowa's defense. So it could honestly go either way, where if they are able to execute, then it doesn't matter who's there. Like you have Joe Blow from Arweva, and he's going to find some way to be in the B gap because damn it, he's supposed to be in the B gap. But if he's a guy who's trying to make something happen or doesn't know how to do it or isn't quite there, then at that point you get the David Montgomery game where it was like 42-17 or something like that, where Iowa State it was the only time I remember in my Iowa high school and growing up fandom where Iowa State just kicked the shit out of UNI. It was the only time that I remember that happening because UNI's defense was undisciplined in that sets, and also David Montgomery's really good. But I'm interested to see, after hearing that the UNI defense is really young, I'm interested to see how they execute, because I'm guessing pretty well, but we'll see once they actually get on the field how long they can execute, because Iowa State will probably play 4 tight ends that are all 6'6" or 6'5" on up, 260 on up. They're probably going to play 8 offensive linemen that are just going to rotate through. And you can execute really well for 2 quarters. Can you execute really well for 4? So that's what I'm really interested in seeing, is not necessarily what the first half looks like, but what does the second half look like, just by nature of how they play.
You'd forgotten our 5 running backs too that we're gonna.
Oh yeah, 5. Yeah, all the oars. There's gonna be.
I think both quarterbacks will play too. I think
3,
we'll see
all
JJ
3. You're probably gonna see all 3.
Yeah.
I will say this too about the defense in general. Always the smartest person on the field is that hybrid linebacker. So each one of those hybrids.
Sam Tim, was he the hybrid guy?
Sam Tim, yep. And
Great
that's
dude.
why he played it.
Shout out Sam.
Same with Josh Mahoney. So he actually went on, and I think he's a doctor now. But always the smartest guys on the field. They have to know their assignments.
The only smart Mahoney.
There's Dr. Mahoney. There's 2 Dr. Mahoney's in no relation. But.
There's a guy who's named Mahoney who's not dumb. I mean, there's one of them.
Spells it differently, but it sounds the same. So let's get to the real meat and potatoes of this podcast. Let's talk about Matthew Cook.
Yeah. Great kid.
Yeah, I'm gonna go change a light bulb or do anything else, guys.
Yeah, Jeff, we'll see you when you get back.
We'll see ya. So for Iowa State fans, if you remember in 2019, when Iowa State beat UNI in triple overtime, and UNI's kicker was 4 for 4 in the game. He had a 50-yarder earlier in the game, a 31-yarder in the game, and then the first overtime he made a 49-yarder. Second overtime made a 28-yarder, and our fans were like, "Come on, kid! Like, miss! What are you doing?" True freshman, absolute freak. That is Matthew Cook, and he is still on UNI's roster.
This will be his sixth season.
He's cheating at this point.
Technically, because of COVID. I know he broke my extra point record. I was 124 of 124. He's had more extra points now. I'm not salty.
He's right now. He's 124 for 124.
I'm not salty about it.
It's like Bohannon breaking the 3-point record. Like, dude played for 7 years. That's why he broke the 3-point record. Just more attempts.
Well, and Grant, we know the Bohannons pretty well, don't we?
Yeah. I went to high school. I played ball with Zach.
But no, Matthew Cook has had an extraordinary career. He's putting up really good numbers. He's a solid kicker. Anytime you're in the red zone, you can always trust that you're going to get 3 points. I'm going to knock on wood because I'm a kicker, and that's what we do.
Not superstitious at all.
No, not at all. I had to wear the same socks on each foot. But no, he's done very well, and he's made an impact on special teams, which has been awesome to watch. His long is 56 yards. Kid has a boot. He's accurate. I just had a talk with Brad Fowler, who was another one of UNI's great kickers. He went to Kennedy. I beat his records. And then now he's like, yeah, and now Matthew Cook is beating both of our records. And we're like, yeah, but we're really happy about it. So it's nice to see that UNI has kind of continued that tradition of great kickers. I mean, It goes back to Mackenzie Homebrecker, Brian Wingert, Billy Hallgren, myself.
Schmidtke was good.
What?
Schmidtke was good.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, you guys are also good. And it's cool too. What I love about UNI is that, with at the bigger programs, and not discrediting UNI, but like Iowa State, we can go out to maybe a Wisconsin or in Illinois. We can go out of the state boundaries to find a kicker if we need it. Whereas UNI, they're able to find someone like yourself, within the state that's just as good as someone who's from California or Texas. We don't need to go that far. And that's what I love about Matthew Cook is he's from Cedar Falls. He's right in their backyard.
Hometown boy.
Yeah, and the kid, I mean, I don't know. I've only seen him play that one time, I think. And right away I was like, this guy's he's a freak. Like, miss. And he didn't listen to me. And what do you think his range is? Like, obviously he said 56, but is he good from 60? Is 56 his long?
I mean, you could probably push him to 60, 65. Kid's got a boot. So whether that changes his accuracy, I'm not sure. I haven't watched him that much in person. Just going to games. I mean, I was at Air Force last year, which was actually a really cool game to go to. Just driving out and seeing Colorado Springs and all that fun stuff. But just watching him, I mean, he's cool. He's calm. He's collected. From what I hear, he's a really great person in general. He's also a hard worker. He's in the weight room every day. He's working along with his teammates. Farley has great things to say about him. So to be honest, as a fan, I would trust him any day.
So as a non-kicker, big golf fan, and one of the things when you're golfing, you have to take into account like humidity and temperature, because there's going to be your added distance or added spin or added whatever. Weather on Saturday is going to be 92 with like a breeze. Does that add distance? Like, does the ball compress differently? Does it carry differently? Does it spin differently? Do you have to think about anything else, or is it just still the same kick because you're trying not to play a fade or a draw? Like, what do you, weather-wise, 92 with the breeze, does that change your approach as opposed to kicking inside at the dome?
I will give you this answer, and this is what Nate Kading told me, that every kick is exactly the same. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what the weather is, you're going to follow through. And Jamie Cole probably has something to harp in on this one, but we do know that in humidity, the ball's not going to fly as far as it's supposed to. If you have 0% humidity, that ball's going to fly. It's going to fly true and the way that it's supposed to. The heat, not so much. It's not that big of a deal. Humidity is a big thing. Wind is obviously a huge factor. But really, if you just stay true to what you know and you're experienced and you've done this for a while, it really shouldn't have any mental change for you. You're always going to just put the ball through the uprights.
Be glad you guys are kicking indoors in November and not outdoors, kicking rocks, essentially like you do at Jack Trice when it's 20 degrees out. And you can no longer wear something sideline.
But Grant,
I
will say this. Youngstown State at the end of the season is a terrible place to play. They call it the Ice Castle for a reason.
Oh.
It sits on the top of a hill in Youngstown, Ohio, and that wind is brutal. Same with Normal, Illinois. It's like flat plains. There's no protection. That ball just goes wherever it wants to go.
That's funny. We just another now there's 2 kickers, so I get kicker questions. Again, because I think golf and kicking are very, 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 very similar. Where it shouldn't matter if there's water in front of you, if there's a sand trap you have to carry, if it's drive is a drive until there's wind, until there's take into what your miss percentage is going to be. If you tend to pull the ball, you might want to push a little bit, right? So when you're kicking, and let's say it says 12 mile an hour wind on weather.com right now. Let's say it kicks up to 20. Kickers.
Sorry.
But what happened? If there's wind, do you pick an aiming point that's hey, you're gonna go, find a spot in the south end zone, or there's a guy wearing a green shirt in whatever? Do you pick a different aiming point, or is it just you look down at the center post and just kick towards the center post? What is the mechanics in your brain if there's wind or if there isn't wind, as far as lining up where you're actually going to be shooting to?
I'll let you answer first, Tyler.
Okay. It's actually really nice in Jack Trice, because when I was playing there, you guys have it all closed in now, don't you?
There's still the hillsides, but now the south end zone
the
is
other side.
Yeah, the south end zone is completely bowled in. The north end zone has the Jacobson building with a big ass scoreboard above it. But yeah, it's enclosed. 80% enclosed. The only thing's not is in the south end zone.
They've also on the north end zone. They've also added a sidewalk that goes around it, and they put it walls, which I think would probably cut down the wind a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was playing at Jack Trice, I actually picked some guy who was up. So if you're going towards the end zone opposite of the Jacobson building, that's what's called, right?
Yeah. So it's the south end zone then. Yeah.
So the south end zone, I would actually pick the guy who was up in the top, and I think the play clock was up there too. It's probably on the field now. But there was a guy up there, and he had a certain shirt on. And so if the wind was blowing some way, I would pick the guy in the background. I would pick that guy who was probably, let's say it's a 10 mile an hour wind. And I'm kicking straight ahead. Wind is coming from the right to the left. I would aim to the guy that was more inside of the uprights. But I always pick somebody who was high up above the uprights, because you don't want to aim for somebody lower. It was just a psychological thing for me. I would always find somebody up higher. And then if the wind was more than 10, 15 miles an hour, I always just aim for the post. So if you have a right to left wind, you aim for the right upright. And so then it'll blow it back to the middle. But that was just, every kicker is different. So Grant, what did you do?
Yeah, I always tell myself, pick a target high and deep. So at Jack Trice, we have, in the south end zone, you've got the guys who are recording, so that they're up high. I always
Bodie or Alex Ernst way up there in the booth getting blown over when it's 10 degrees.
Yeah, I always imagine myself, no matter where I was at, that was my trajectory. I was trying to put the ball, I was trying to put it right in Ernst's lap, and it's kind of we kind of had the luxury at Iowa State too of the indoor. They were in the same spot. They were recording behind our net that dropped down, and I would always try to put it over the net into their lap, and I would, often. But yeah, I agree too. Depending on how strong the wind is, and that's something that you figure out in pregame too. Assuming the wind doesn't change that much. There was when we played at UNLV my freshman year, Geyer and I were lining up from 35, and the wind was so strong in our face, it would go from 35 and then just drop down before it got to the goalpost. This wind is brutal. But if it's like a left to right or right to left wind, I always would never go outside of the uprights unless it was like a crazy wind. But at that point, if it's so strong, it'd probably knock it down and be shorter as well. So I'd always pick something high and deep that was just inside the upright, because as a kicker, you don't want to ever aim outside of the upright, because if for whatever reason the wind stops and you're kicking outside the upright, you're just setting yourself up for a miss. So that's what I would tell myself. High and deep. If we played like at Kansas, where it was just wide open in the background, I would pick a cloud and just imagine I was kicking that ball to the moon. So
that's a really funny story though, because I do have to tell you my redshirt sophomore year when I first started. So that was after the Iowa State game, and at the end of the season, we had to beat Illinois State to go to the playoffs, and we were fighting a 40-mile-an-hour wind in our face. Woo! Didn't make anything in warmups, not even an extra point. And somehow I pulled off a 40-yard field goal, and I just literally put the ball up there and prayed. And it went in, and I was like, what? Okay.
Pierce through that wind, yeah. And Jack tries to, it swirls so much, so you could have, I swear to God, there was multiple times where I had the wind in my face or the wind at my back at both halves, kicking both directions. It's like, this makes no sense.
Kickoffs and Jack tries you don't know where that ball is going to go.
How do you just, hit and pray? Is that the main goal?
Spray and pray.
Yeah. Pray.
I close my eyes a lot and just, we're just going.
Please go where I want it to go.
and then it was always great when Grant was kicking off, because there was I don't know what your touchback percentage was, but it was pretty high, which was nice because I was a missile. So I was right next to Grant on either side, depending on, what our setup was. And it was awesome because there were a lot of times when you could there is going to be somebody set up to try and trap you, and you can just punk a guy who's trying to trap you, knowing that the ball's probably going to go out of the end zone. So you can go out of your way a little bit to kind of give a little bit extra business. So it was always nice to have Grant kicking off because you could count on a touchback. I pray that these Iowa State teams, these next few years, will have the same luxury of being able to have a consistent touchback, because that's not a thing that's been very good.
I'm going to bitch for a second, talking about touchbacks. The 4 years that I was in college were the 4 years that they moved the kickoff from the 35 to the 30.
To the 30, yep. That was my first year when I started.
Did they move it back?
They did.
I didn't pay attention.
Probably your senior year, Tyler. They moved it back to the 35.
Yeah, it was my junior year. But I was my redshirt sophomore year, I struggled because I never had a big leg. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to try to get it as far as I can.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, talking about kickoffs, I have one more thing to say. I was on the not top 10 list for 52 weeks on ESPN because we were in the playoffs against Wofford, and I kicked one to the end zone. The guy caught it.
Oh, I remember this.
And then he
didn't take a knee.
He drops it, and we scored a touchdown because we recovered it.
So here, to set the scene, Tyler kicks off. Guy catches it. And doesn't call fair catch, which would call it a touchback, and also doesn't take a knee. But imagine what happens after you call fair catch, where you catch it and then you kind of either hand it back to the referee or you drop the ball or whatever. And this guy doesn't call fair catch, doesn't take a knee, but he catches it and then acts as if he did. He just totally forgot to call it. So he goes to hand the ball to the referee, and the referee's like, I don't want this. I can't take this. Play's live. So he drops it. And then it's just starts walking away, and UNI they recover it in the end zone. I didn't know that you were the one that actually kicked that, because I remember that play for just the sheer dumbness of the entire thing. That's also a failure on the protector, the guy who's the off returner, who should be, because he's looking at him the entire time, make sure he gets the ball caught. The stay back guy or the come on or whatever. That's his job too, of being get on the ball. So congratulations.
That was also after he got called for roughing the kicker.
That same guy.
It's not my proudest moment. So he roughed me, and then we scored a touchdown, and then I kicked it off, and then he was on ESPN's not top 10. So I feel bad for the guy, but he barely touched my foot, and I just went down. It was a flop.
You don't feel bad for him, dude. That's what we're there for. We're acting. You didn't touch me. We went down.
It's method, man. It's method.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that moment. It's still on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Oh man. Okay. So to wrap this whole thing up, as a UNI fan / ex-player, what are your expectations going into this game? Is the expectation to win? Is the expectation to keep it competitive and we'll see what happens? Is the expectation what are your expectations as a fan going into this game?
I think my expectations as a fan and a former player are I want to see what this coaching staff has done with the players that they have. I'm assuming it's going to be a competitive game. I'm hoping it's going to be a competitive game. I'm hoping that UNI wins, but we'll see. I'm excited to see the young players come out and make a name for themselves. I'm excited for them to come out, give 110%. And I'm excited to see Matt Cook just continue. That's what I'm really excited about. I've talked to this kid. I sent him Instagram messages where I was comparing his kick to my kick, and it was cool. And I was like, "Oh, do you mind if I post this?" He was like, "Yeah, it sounds awesome." But he sounds like a great kid. I think the program is always exciting to see a new season. I'm excited looking past Iowa State, and hopefully we can make a deeper run to the playoffs. And that's something that as an alumni, it's always hard to watch and see them not succeed in that way. So I'm looking forward to this year. Just in general, the new coaching staff, putting these guys in the right positions, which I know they'll do. And I'm also, don't get me wrong, I'm a UNI fan. When they play the Cyclones, I cheer for UNI. But when the Cyclones are playing, I'm always 100% a huge fan just because Grant, I love you. I love the program. So yeah, best of luck to you guys. I hope that this year is amazing. So
I appreciate that, man. For a second there, you sound like a Hawkeye fan. Oh, cheer for Iowa State, except
for when they're playing Iowa.
You're not a Hawk fan, though, Tyler. Know that.
For the audio listeners, that was a
that's a very grimacing look of negativity.
That was a death stare at Grant.
I'm just kidding. I know it's all right.
I will cheer for the Cyclones first,
I know you will.
always, and I will never regret saying that.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. This is congratulations on being the first guest ever. Actually, first virtual guest. Rob Gray was the first guest. So congratulations on being the second guest ever on Kicking It.
I hope it was good.
The first guest though to break down an opponent.
Well, and hopefully I gave the Cyclone fans enough, not too much, because let's be honest, I still want UNI to win. But I'll give you the dirty after the game. How about that?
Got it.
Shoot, we're wanting that now. All
right. Well, thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Tyler. All right, Jeff.
Well, that's the first kicker we've had on. First non-Grant kicker.
Won't be the last.
That's going to be potentially more. I think we're going to try and do as much of this as we can, getting with, like I said, former players or whether it's reporters or somebody who knows what you're getting into. Because as the conference season goes along, we'll have a better idea. You're playing Oklahoma State. You've been able to see Oklahoma State a little bit, but you don't know who the backups are, who the subs are, how they've been performing, because you're not watching every game. So it'll be we're going to try and get somebody from every team to be able to prep into this.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a little more difficult to find someone for the
Cincinnati's.
Yeah, non-conference and the newbies like the BYU and the Cincinnati's. I feel like I'm pretty connected in the kicking fraternity, but when it comes to teams like that, yeah, we'll find someone though, and we'll see.
There's gonna be a guy named Daryl who just lives in Cincinnati.
That's my father-in-law's name.
Does Daryl live in Cincinnati?
No, he lives in Tampa.
Oh, okay. He can help with UCF then.
Yeah.
Hey, Daryl, what do you know about the Knights?
Yeah, I think that was good though. I think what we're gonna see tomorrow. We're gonna see Saturday is two younger, inexperienced teams. UNI's got some experience, but it sounds like on defense they're pretty inexperienced, and on offense we're pretty inexperienced as well too. We're only starting 5 seniors. Did you see how many freshmen, redshirt or true, are on the depth chart?
Lots and lots. And there's 2 starting true freshman linebackers. There's James Neal.
Wilkes he's a redshirt. But
oh, sorry.
Sadowski is true though.
Yeah, I mean, kid was in high school last year, so it will be interesting, and I think that's actually what. So on Football and Random Things tomorrow, we're going to come out with. We're going to record this tomorrow. I think it'll probably come out both. I don't know, sometime soon. Aiden will take care of that, but
they'll both come out tomorrow.
Both are going to come out tomorrow. So later today, once Fart comes out, we're going to Colin and I and Connor are going to go through the depth chart to kind of essentially break down what we think is actually going to happen, because there's so many ors that are on that list that you have going to have to sift through some stuff to get there.
Yeah. PJ Fleck would be jealous of how many ors we have on our roster, on our 2 deep.
Row the damn boat, Grant. Row the damn boat.
The one thing I will say about depth chart, and you guys can obviously cover it. My guy Gilbert is not.
Yeah,
on.
you were Jace Gilbert apologist 2 weeks ago.
I'm still banging his drum, man. Hey, but you know what? I will say that I still have faith in Jace, and if Contreras is better than him, I trust the coaches. And hopefully I become a Contreras fan because I know nothing about him.
Would you be a contrarian?
Whoa, that's a good one.
That's the fan club, the Contrarians.
But we had kicking woes for a long time.
Until Andrew Mevis.
Yep, except Mevis, and then Cole Netton, and then the dude they brought in from Oregon State for a year. I can't think of his name. Garrett Owens. He was good for a year. Do you remember him at all?
Nope.
And so I'm hoping that we can get back because special teams kicking has been pretty strong under Campbell for the most part. It's just the other aspects of special teams that have been, that hangnail that just when you rip it off, it just rips down to your knuckle.
It's just bloody for the rest of the damn year.
Oh, dude, yeah. So
right.
I think that's good though. I think it'll be a good game for us though. I don't want to give him predictions. I think we'll win, but I think it'll be a good game to try some new things. Obviously, we have a lot of new coaches on. Iowa State's got a lot of new coaches on the offensive side of the ball. Iowa State's breaking in an offensive coordinator, breaking in a running back coach, offensive line coach,
special teams coordinator.
So yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see how Shieldhouse, if the offense is much different, or I'm curious if Campbell's still going to have his way, I guess, if you will, and kind of be, this is how we're going to do it, or if he's going to let Shieldhouse kind of do his thing, because Shieldhouse was a great quarterback in college.
We'll see. Finally, get to actually see what the team's going to look like on Saturday and park this ship in Cedar Falls Harbor.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining in. We will see you next time.